Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, Bayishim, Raka Kudash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bayishim Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to Ya'akim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the Brother Raya with another video, and I'm going to start it off with Matthew chapter 24, verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, speaking of Yahushai HaMashiach, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? Jump down to verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars, the Saudi war in Yemen, the Syrian civil war, and rumors of wars, Israel threatening to attack Iran, the U.S. threatening to attack Iran, the U.S. threatening to attack China, Russia, Venezuela, etc., etc. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. It's all a part of biblical prophecy, Akim. For nation shall rise against nation. These coming race wars, which you can see the beginning stages of right now over this whole coronavirus situation and people being hostile towards the so-called Chinese people who are the biblical Moabites. And then you've also got these Moabites being hostile towards so-called black people in China. And then, of course, you've got racial tensions constantly bubbling in the United States of America, which are eventually going to come to a head. And kingdom against kingdom, Israel against Iran, the U.S. against Iran, the U.S. against China, China against the U.S. against Russia, Saudi Arabia against Iran, and there shall be famines and pestilences, such as the African swine fever, swine flu, bird flu, the coronavirus, and earthquakes in diverse places. And earthquakes are happening damn near daily. All these are the beginning of sorrows. These are just the birth pains before the end truly comes. The end is only going to come once the mark of the beast, which is the RFID/NFC microchip implant, is mandatorily implemented. Once that happens, that battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, or War of Armageddon, that nuclear-armed World War III is going to kick off, and then Yahushua is going to return to save the elect of his people and his people only, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans who are the true children of Israel, and also put the final nail in the coffin of the rulership of you heathens, chiefly you Edomites, or so-called white people. But in this video, the end-time sign I'm going to be dealing with are these famines. And I've got two articles from the economiccollapseblog.com to show you the signs of the times. And if you have that spiritual eyesight, you can clearly see that we're living in the last seconds of these last days. My first article is titled, The UN is now admitting that this coronavirus pandemic could spark famines of biblical proportions. And the second article is titled, The Next Generation, Giant locust armies of biblical proportions threaten to cause mass starvation in Africa. Millions of people are going to die off from famines during the last seconds of these last days. This is 2 Esdras chapter 5, verse 1. Nevertheless, as coming the tokens, behold, the days shall come that they which dwell upon the earth shall be taken in a great number from famines, pestilences, these race wars, and this world war, and the way of truth shall be hidden, and the land shall be barren of faith. The famine of the word, where the men of the Lord are no longer going to be out there on the highways and byways, or our video epistles like this are no longer going to be out on the internet. So to those that didn't drink from these rivers of living waters while you could, you're going to have to get it how you live in that day. This is 2 Esdras 16, verse 22 to 23. For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. These race wars, civil wars, martial law, and ultimately that nuclear third world war. And the dead shall be cast out as dung or shit, and there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted, and the cities shall be cast down. There's going to be so much death and dead bodies in that day that you're not going to give a second thought to it because you're going to be so numb to it. You're going to care about those dead bodies as much as you care about that turd that you flushed down the toilet. Judgment is quickly coming to 2/3 of you hard-headed Israelites for your wickedness and refusing to hearken back unto your power, Yahweh Ba'ishim Yahushai, and to you heathens for afflicting the children of Israel in the past all the way up until today, chiefly you Edomites, but unto the elect. Our salvation is nearer than when we believed, Akim, so now's not the time to be getting weak in the faith. You should have that fire in your spirit to be pushing this word as hard as you possibly can to make your calling and election sure and have that protective hedge of Yahweh Ba'ishim Yahushai over you for when all hell truly breaks loose. Let's get back to that first article. The UN is now admitting that this coronavirus pandemic could spark famines of biblical proportions. Behold, the days come when they that dwell upon the earth shall be taken in great number. What the head of the UN's World Food Program just said should be making front page headlines all over the globe, because if what he is claiming is true, we are about to see global food shortages on a scale that is absolutely unprecedented in modern history. Even before COVID-19 arrived, armies of locusts the size of major cities were voraciously eating crops all across Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, and UN officials were loudly warning about what that would mean for global food production. And now the coronavirus shutdowns that have been implemented all over the planet have brought global trade to a standstill. They are making it more difficult to maintain normal food production operations, and they have forced countless workers to stay home and not earn a living. All of this adds up to a recipe for a complete and utter nightmare in the months ahead. David Beasley is the head of the UN's World Food Program, and on Tuesday he warned that we could actually see famines of biblical proportions by the end of this calendar year. The following comes from ABC News. And with David Beasley using terms like biblical proportions, I wouldn't be surprised if he's been watching the Men of the Lord of GMS. Earlier this year, you had President Trump talking about the prophets of doom and their perennial predictions of the apocalypse. The coronavirus pandemic could soon double hunger, causing famines of biblical proportions around the world by the end of the year. The head of the World Food Program, David Beasley, told the UN Security Council on Tuesday. Beasley warned that analysis from the World Food Program, the UN's Food Assistance Branch, shows that because of the coronavirus, an additional 130 million people could be pushed to the brink of starvation by the end of 2020. And really, that's not that far away. We're about halfway through 2020 as it is. That's a total of 265 million people. Again, behold, the days come when they that dwell upon the earth shall be taken in great number. He described what we are facing as a hunger pandemic, and he insisted that urgent action must be taken in order to avoid a nightmare scenario. But in some parts of the globe, a nightmare scenario is already unfolding. For example, close to half the population of South Sudan is currently facing starvation, and for many of them, the only food that is available is what gets dropped from the sky. The villagers hear the distant roar of jet engines before a cargo plane makes a deafening pass over Mogok, dropping sacks of grain from its hold to the marooned dust bowl below. There is no other way to get food to this starving hamlet in South Sudan. There are no roads, and the snaking Nile is miles away. Over in South Africa, the chronic food shortages have already become so severe that they are starting to spark rioting, looting, and civil unrest. Unrest broke out in parts of South Africa amid chronic food shortages sparked by the coronavirus pandemic. Looters raided shops, attacked each other, the army, and police after breaching one of the strictest lockdowns in the world. Hey, in 2 Esdras chapter 15, verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor. They began raiding shops and attacking each other in South Sudan, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread, the lack of food, and for great tribulation. This is taking place over in South Sudan, and also with them attacking police. That plays into 2nd Esdras 15, I believe, verse 17 or 18, where it says, there shall be sedition among men, and they shall not regard their kings or princes. Police fired rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse the mobs, but local community leaders fear more outbreaks of violence are imminent. Here in the Western world, we don't have to worry about such things yet, but without a doubt, the number of needy people is rapidly rising. This past Saturday, vehicles literally began lining up at 2 a.m. in the morning for a food distribution event at the San Antonio Food Bank. The San Antonio Food Bank teamed up with Atascosa County to feed meals and hope to hundreds of people Saturday morning. Vehicles began to line up around 2 a.m. Saturday outside the county courthouse, winding through the neighborhoods at least 2 miles away. I've never heard of people lining up so early before. I have heard of vehicles lining up at the crack of dawn around the country in recent days, but 2 a.m. is absolutely nuts. But these people realize that when the food is gone, there will be no more handouts that day, and there are many that are absolutely desperate to get something to feed their families. As this coronavirus pandemic has created an enormous amount of fear all over the country, empty shelves have been reported in frozen food sections all over the nation, and the fact that an increasing number of meat processing plants are being temporarily closed down is certainly not helping things. According to CBS News, at least 17 meat processing plants in the United States have been shut down so far. Coronavirus infections in at least 17 meat processing plants across 9 states are contributing to a spike in confirmed cases in the Midwest. Although 13 plants are already closed temporarily or operating at reduced capacity, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds says shutting down plants would hurt farmers and the national food supply. In a desperate attempt to keep as many facilities in her state open as possible, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds has enlisted the help of the National Guard. Hundreds of National Guard personnel are being activated in Iowa as coronavirus sweeps through meat processing plants in a state that accounts for about a third of U.S. pork supply. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds said 250 National Guard members have been moved to full-time federal duty status and could help with testing and contact tracing for workers at plants operated by Tyson Foods Incorporated, a national beef packing company. And personally, I wouldn't be surprised if those National Guard troops were deployed to those meat processing plants for more than just testing people. Just last week, you had a special National Guard unit activated which deals with evacuating high-interest political figures from places like Washington, D.C. in the event that civil unrest breaks out. If these food processing plants stay shuttered and meat doesn't get to these supermarkets and food prices increase, people could very well attack these meat processing plants out of desperation and hunger. A couple of weeks ago, there was a political pundit that said that the U.S. was mere weeks away from severe food shortages. The noose is quickly tightening around you people. But that's it with this article. Let's go to the second one. The next generation, giant locust armies of biblical proportions threaten to cause mass starvation, famines in Africa. Even before COVID-19 became the biggest public health crisis to hit the globe in decades, enormous swarms of locusts the size of major cities were devouring crops throughout Eastern Africa, across the Middle East, and even in some parts of Asia. Now a new generation that officials are describing as 20 times bigger has emerged, and the devastation that this new generation of locusts is causing is extremely alarming. These colossal locusts swarms can travel up to 90 miles a day, and as you will see below, when they descend upon the field, they can literally eat everything there in as little as 30 seconds. This new generation of locusts has been spotted as far south as Congo, as far north as Iran, and as far east as India. In other words, the food supplies of billions of people are at risk. Yesterday, I reported that the UN had used the phrase biblical proportions to describe the famines that are starting to happen around the globe as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Well, the phrase biblical proportions is also being used to describe these giant armies of locusts. While much of the world focuses on the coronavirus pandemic that has infected more than 1.6 million people across the globe, East Africa is battling the worst invasion of desert locusts in decades, a month-long scourge of biblical proportions that experts warn could get worse with a large second wave already arriving in parts of the region. Heavy rains last month created ideal conditions for this next generation of locusts, and we are being told that the new swarms are particularly severe in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia. And now, at the worst time, a second wave of locusts 20 times bigger than the first has descended on the region. Thanks to heavy rains late last month, according to the FAO, the swarms have infiltrated Yemen and firmly established themselves across the Persian Gulf, having laid eggs along the 560 miles of Iran's coastline. New swarms are particularly severe in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia. Unfortunately, this is a really bad time for a new generation of locusts to show up, because this is the time of the year when farmers are planting their fields. When locusts invade a new area, all the farmers can do is watch as all their hard work is destroyed. The following is how an FAO official is describing the current state of affairs. The timing is really horrendous because the farmers are just planting and the seedlings are just coming up now since it's the beginning of the rainy season, says Keith Cressman, Senior Locust Forecasting Officer with the FAO. And it's right at the same time when you have an increasing number of swarms in Kenya and in Ethiopia. There's already pictures and reports of the seedlings getting hammered by the swarms. So basically, that's it for the farmers' crops. Here in the United States, we have never experienced anything like this, and so most Americans don't really understand how destructive these locusts can be. As I noted above, when they come storming into a field, they can literally eat all the crops there in as little as 30 seconds. Massive swarms of locusts are devouring entire fields of crops in as little as 30 seconds, fueling fears of a major food crisis in some of the world's poorest countries. International aid organization Concern Worldwide has warned. The charity said communities in Pakistan, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia are facing alarming food shortages, with the crops they grow to survive being eaten in seconds by the flying desert locusts. The United Nations is calling these locust armies an unprecedented threat to global food security. Of course, the exact same thing could be said about the coronavirus. And let us not forget that African swine fever has already wiped out approximately 1/4 of all pigs in the world, an example of those pestilences. This truly has become a perfect storm for global food production, and many believe that what we have seen so far is just the beginning. And please don't be tempted to think that this is just a problem that Africa is dealing with. All the way over in Pakistan, officials are using the word disaster to describe the threat posed by these locusts. The following comes from a Pakistani news source. Parliamentary leader of Pakistan, Tehreek-e-Insaf, and Balochistan Minister for Secondary Education, Sardar Yar Muhammad Rind, has expressed deep concern over the procreation of locusts across the province, stressing upon an anti-locust spray on urgent bias. If procreation of locusts does not stop, it would badly affect crops and will also lead to nutritional disaster in Balochistan, Rind noted, adding that due to consecutive attacks, growers and farmers are facing extreme difficulties as widespread destruction of crops is feared due to procreation of locusts. And after everything that they have already been through, farmers in Australia are facing an enormous invasion of locusts as well, although it is a different species they are dealing with. After a year of battling drought, fire, dust, flood, and disease, farmers in far western New South Wales are now facing a plague locust infestation. The Australian plague locust species, if not controlled, can cause significant damage to crops and pastures by consuming all in their path. These different locust species are making their rounds across the entire planet in biblical proportions. In the post-World War II era, can you point to another time when the world was facing so many major problems all at once? As I write this article, I can't seem to think of one. That's it with this article. But the famines that the Most High is about to bring to this planet are going to be so severe that people are going to be cannibalizing themselves due to the lack of food. This is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 19 through 20. Through the wrath of Yahweh of hosts is the land darkened, and the people shall be as the fuel of the fire. No man shall spare his brother. Back in 2nd Esdras chapter 15, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall search his house with the force of the sword due to the lack of bread. As a lot of brothers have been saying, 2nd Esdras chapter 15 and 16 have been flying off the pages. And he shall snatch on the right hand and be hungry, and he shall eat on the left hand, and they shall not be satisfied. They shall eat every man the flesh of his own arm. There's going to be a lack of food, so people are going to turn to cannibalism. Then there's going to be a lack of people, so people are going to turn to eating their own flesh. So with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified. Just keep strong and keep pushing this word. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathens, chiefly Esau, Edom. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala. Until next time, Shalom.